Want to go far in business and in life? You can't do it alone. The secret is expanding your network of personal relationships, building friendships, connecting on an intimate level, away from the office, over a coffee or cocktail. Welcome to All In with the real Nate Payo. The show that asks what happens when you go all in and leverage the power of your network of personal relationships.
Hello, welcome to the All In podcast. I'm your host, Nate Payo. Really excited today. I have Michelle Kuei with me. She's a confident coach. And so usually I talk about like how I met somebody and what brought them to the show and how we connected via like circumstances or online and stuff like this. And Michelle and I don't even know exactly how we met, but like we were connected on LinkedIn. I was following her and I think I liked one of your posts and you like reached out and sent a message and we're like, hey, let's get on a call and do a podcast. And sometimes there's like a little bit of introduction and we get to know each other a little bit before, but I found a lot of times those great conversations we have with people ahead of time before the record buttons hit, that's where all the good stuff is. And then when you try to recreate it, it's not as spontaneous. So we're trying something a little bit fun today. Is just like straight up hitting the record and see where this conversation goes. So welcome to the show, Michelle. How are you?
Thank you so much, Nate, for agreeing to this spontaneous invite. It was a self-invite, and I don't remember exactly how we connected either. I think it was just, we like each other's posts, and I saw that you have a podcast. I'm like, he looks nice. Let me reach out to him and see if he's willing to invite me to a podcast show.
Well, it's good. My profile looks like I'm a nice person, so hopefully it doesn't scare anybody away. Cool. Well, I was like looking through your stuff and I was like, you got like a really interesting story. You're helping others. Your page is called Elevate Life Coach. Is that what it's called?
Yes, it's called Elevate Life Coaching. And
yeah.
So basically what I do is I help negative self-talkers to become the most confident person in the room. And in this case, in front of the camera, right? Like right now, we're all stuck in front of the camera. So becoming the most confident person in front of the camera by letting go of our fear for judgment.
That's something that I think we all struggle with, at least for me. And I'll be telling you a little backstory about my podcast was created as part of this journey. What I've called the all-in journey was I've felt compelled in the past to do something bigger, to have a bigger impact on things and build something. And I've had this entrepreneurial spirit. And every time I started doing something in the past, and it came to the point where like you need to do a lot more authenticity to promote yourself, I'd always get hesitant and I'd pull back and I'd back off of it and I'd say, hey, this wasn't for me. And I'd push it to the side. And then the itch would come back and I'd be like, oh, I need to do something about it. And I would start going down the path again. And I get to the point like, oh, I need to post authentic stuff. I need to be in front of the camera. I need to do this. I need to talk about that. And I'd pull back again. And this time I said, I'm just going to do it no matter what, because I'm not going to get anywhere if I keep getting in my own way. So I'm going to just post stuff, get over my fear and do it. And then part of that kind of led to this journey of like, oh, why don't I do a podcast? Because one, it feels really uncomfortable to get in front of the microphone and talk to people that I've never met before, let alone record it, let alone then post it for everybody to listen to or nobody to listen to for that matter. You think about those things like, but then at the same time, it's like, well, if nobody's going to listen, like, why do you even care anyways? You shouldn't be scared if nobody's going to listen. And then if everybody does listen, then that's what you want anyway. So that for me was something that like I feel personally relatable to, is because I get that fear when you have to do something, put yourself out there on camera. And then the second time is when you have to post it publicly, like, oh my God, it's up there for people to see. So how did you kind of get to that point where that's something that you're passionate about and that you wanted to help people with?
So like all my life, and I totally hear you. I am you. And I think we all share that feeling of, oh my gosh, I'm going to try something big and I wanted to do this, but I'm not sure how other people is going to think about this. And even before we take that little step, we already created like a whole I always call ourselves as a script writer. Before we do something, we're writing scripts about how that story is going to play out, how that event is going to turn out. And all my life, for a good 30 years of my life, I'm physically disabled, just to give the listener a little background of how I look like. So I'm physically disabled. I walk with 2 crutches, and I live my entire life as someone who's being very small. I always play small because I don't like the feeling of being seen, being judged. And every time I go out to the public, people will turn and look at me. And every time they turn and look at me, my script writing goes, well, they're looking at me because I look different, because, I don't look normal. And the word I use is normal. And normal to me is every woman should have some kind of shape, diamond, pear, any shape and form that you want to categorize them in. They were in some kind of shape. But when I look at myself into the mirror, I don't fit in any other category. So I was very self-conscious about my body image. I'm very self-conscious about how I look in the public, how I look in front of everybody. And just like, is standing in front of a camera, that's like a huge no-no for me. That means I have to look at myself of how I look and how other people are seeing that image of me standing in front of camera. That's like a big no-no for me. I can't do that. That's like huge fear for me. How I overcome that is I finally realized, and just like you did, put out the podcast, I don't really fucking care anymore. I don't care how other people think about this. I want to honor myself and really, truly honor that authenticity, because that feeling of being trapped inside, it's not pleasant. It's not fun. So I don't want to live my rest of my life this way. So I'm just, I don't give a shit anymore. I'm just going to stand in front of the camera and I'm going to talk, and people can judge. I don't care. It's not going to hurt. It's not going to hurt my body. So you can judge all you want. I'm going to be me. And it was in that moment where I decided, you know what, I'm just going to show up and be me rather than worrying about how other people think about me.
How long ago did you make that decision?
That was 7 years ago. So I'm 47 now.
And how, tell me a little bit about what that journey's been like from, like clearly getting out of your comfort zone didn't kill you because you're still here. So like, what have you learned about yourself, or where's this journey taking you? So I live my life like that, being very small and playing small and being depressed all the time. I woke up when I was 40. One day I was like, you know what? Enough is enough. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to try something great. And since physical disability, this physical challenge is my challenge, I'm going to go and challenge my physical challenge. Let me see what I can do with this. And so I started to work out. I went to the gym. I started to doing weights, using the machine, and I didn't know how to use the machine. So I went ahead and hired myself a personal trainer who can train me using their expertise. So I hired a personal trainer, and one day I told my personal trainer, I said, listen, I'm going to go hike. And he was like, oh, okay, so where do you want to hike? We have a lot of mountain here. In California, we have Mount Wilson. Do you want to go hike? Like maybe start there? I said, no. I want to do something bigger. And during that time, my friend was talking about Machu Picchu. So I said, well, I want to go to Machu Picchu. He said, you want to go what? Where do you want to go? I said, Machu Picchu. I want to go to Machu Picchu. He's like, oh, okay. And, when we hear something big and something that's, dangerous, our fear-based mentality start kicking in. Well, you might want to not do that. You might hurt yourself. So he was trying to convince me not to do it. I'm like, no, I'm done. I want to do this. So he trained me. And in September 2016, I booked my ticket to Peru. I brought my 2 crutches, hiked up that Machu Picchu for 26 miles all the way in. I roughed it out, 4 days of camping outside. And it was something that's so transformative. I came home. I was really inspired. I'm like, there's nothing that I cannot do as long as my mind starts setting up and determined in doing it. And there's like 3D rules that I share often to people. I said the 3D rules are determination, discipline, and dedication. Right? You have to be determined in doing the things that you want to do. You have to discipline yourself in doing it and showing up every day. And then you have to be dedicated to the things that you said you were going to do. Every day, you're going to show up 100% every single day. And consistency is what really matters. Mm-hmm.
So that's how I overcome that fear with those 3D rules.
I love those rules because like I'm a big believer in discipline and consistency. Because for me, I've been a fan of motivation for a long time. Like I always read the motivation books, and I always was really excited, and I'd get like really jammed about something. I'd be like, yeah, this is it. This is the time I'm gonna like ride this wave and take it to the moon. Whether it was a business goal or it was a financial goal or it was like a fitness goal. And what would happen is like you'd have a rough day here, a rough day there, and lo and behold, it's like you kind of lose your momentum, you lost your motivation. You'd be like, I don't really feel like it tomorrow. I'll do more tomorrow. And I'd always be like, if I just had more motivation. And that changed for me when I listened to, do you know who Jocko Willink is?
Mm-hmm.
But so I was listening to a podcast he had on. He's talking about what do you do on the days you don't feel like doing it? And it's like you get up and you go anyways. It's discipline that gets you through the hard times. Like motivation is fleeting, but discipline's the strength that gets you up and gets you going and gets you doing it. And you think about it as like you probably have more days that you don't really feel like doing what you need to do than the days you really feel like doing it. Like some days you don't want to do it at all, and some days it's just like just not right this moment, maybe later, and later becomes the next day. And once I had that mindset, I was like, oh my God, like all of a sudden my consistency improved. And I was going every single day working on those things I was at. And I'd hear that voice in my head, like, I need to get up. I don't want to get up. I'm going to go. I'm going to get up, but I don't want to do it. But I'll just get there and I'll just do the motions. I'll just go through the motions until it's done. And usually what would happen is going through the motions became more than going through the motions, became doing really what was required. And I'd be like, I'm glad I did that because now it's past me. And tomorrow, if I don't feel like going tomorrow, then I'll do it tomorrow. So like that helped. But then I was also building this consistency. And I think a lot of times when we're trying to do something, we want to do something really big and really extravagant and really like, either like it's like a life hack or it's like something like really extreme. And we think, okay, if we do this really extreme thing, it's going to be the one thing that changes us, but it's not. You're right. It's consistency. And if I can go 5 days, if I put 5 days in on a project, that's better than 4. And if I can put 6 in, that's better than 5. And if I just consistently show up every single day, I'm going to hammer away at it. I'm going to chip away at it, and it's going to get better. So I love that discipline and consistency because I just wholeheartedly believe that's really what it's about. It's just showing up every single day and putting in the work.
And I think a lot of people always aim big, right? So we all have that big goal. We all wanted to achieve something that's greater. So I wanted to go hike, but I can't just go from not being able to walk on a treadmill to hike. I have to break it down into smaller pieces. And I think in the business world, we use SMART goals a lot, right? So it's subjective. Is it measurable? Is it achievable? Like, what's the time frame? But even break it down into further, we need to look at like what is our baby step that's acceptable for us to do this week? What is acceptable for us to do today? And so by breaking down into a smaller step, that bigger goal become more achievable and more realistic. And there are days, like you just said, there are days where we wake up and we don't have that motivation. And I think the other thing that people look for is motivation coming from the outside. So we listen to podcasts, we go to seminar, we attend these great big events, and you feel so motivated, so driven. And by the end of the week, guess what? That motivation that came from outside, it's going to disappear. It's going to fade away. It's going to die down. Your motivation, your inspiration comes from the inside. You have to use that inside out approach in order to sustain that motivation, in order to sustain that inspiration that you need to carry you through that whole journey of making and achieving something that's big. So unless you start working from the inside, then that motivation is always going to be short-lived. And you're not really addressing, what's going on in the inside. And our motivation can affected by so many different elements.
Well, I think too, when you're talking about like you're using outside sources for motivation, like we can use that as an excuse. And what I'm using it as an excuse is like you think you're taking steps towards your path, but you're not, because you're like, oh, I'm listening to motivation, I'm getting motivated to do what I want to do. But in reality is like you're consuming information instead of moving forward for the needle. So if going back to like, hey, you want to get in front of the camera and speak. So you say, okay, let me research which cameras I'm going to use. Let me research how to take better videos. Let me research better lighting stuff. Like, I'm doing all these things because I'm learning to do it, and I'm getting inspired to make these videos. But what you're not doing is you're not working on the core, which is getting in front of the camera and talking and getting out of your comfort zone. So you think you're being busy, you think you're working on things getting you in the path, but you're not. You're avoiding. And I'm a big advocate of this, is like, just do it. Just like get up there and know that the first time you're going to do it, it's going to be terrible, but you're going to do better. So if you constantly just kind of keep going after it, you're going to get more comfortable. You're going to get a little bit better, and doing a video for yourself, like in front of the mirror, or like I used to do this when I was in Toastmasters, is I would just I'd turn the video on, and I would drive, and I would just repeat my speech. And then I'd stop it and be like, okay, how long did it take? And stuff like that. And I just kept doing that over and over again. And the first few times would be like terrible, and I would have trouble getting started, but I got more comfortable just talking about it. And then when it came time to like give the speech in front of people, it wasn't so hard because I had practiced what I was going to say, and I kind of knew the flow, and I knew when, okay, if I wanted to say this instead of that, I knew how it would go. But if I didn't just kind of practice, like, I never would have gotten any better at it.
Mm-hmm. I think it's about taking ourselves into accountability, right? So if we said we're going to do something, how do you hold yourself accountable for all the action and taking those baby steps in order to reach what you want? If I want to go hike, if I want to stand in front of the camera and be comfortable and speaking in front of the camera, how do you hold yourself accountable for doing that, rather than giving yourself some kind of excuses so that you don't have to do it? And we all are capable of making up excuses so that we don't have to do it. But when you really determine and holding yourself accountable, and you know that if I don't do this, this is how I'm continuing going to live, then perhaps that in itself will become a driving force of, you know what, I'm just going to turn my camera on and I'm going to let it go and see where it carries me. And it's okay if it sucks. And I remember going back, just a couple of days ago, I was going back to my first video. Now I feel more comfortable and I know how to speak in front of the camera. But as I was going back to the first video I shoot on Facebook and going live, I was like, oh my God, I sucked. I totally sucked.
It's funny you talk about like live, because like I'd been doing videos and they weren't so bad for me. And if I made something and I posted, I wouldn't be too worried about like how well it came out, because I was like, people don't pay that close attention anyways, and they're not going to get all bothered by like if I messed up my words or I said something I didn't mean to, or they're just going to get the general concept of what I was talking about anyways. Mm-hmm. But then I did some lives, and nobody was in my live for like the first time I did a live. Like nobody was in there for like the first like 5 minutes, and I was just kind of like talking, and I just kind of got on this like roll, and I was just kind of rambling, and all of a sudden somebody popped in, and I was like, ooh. Oh my God. It was like being caught like singing in the shower naked, and like somebody walked in on you. You're like, what are you doing? Like, I'm in here by myself, and it threw me for a loop. And so I think the live thing for me was weird, because not that there's people that would watch you talk. It's that like the person that would come and drop in, I would be like, oh my God, I didn't realize that they were paying attention. Like, and that was weird for me at first. Was that kind of like your experience with going live on LinkedIn or live first?
All the time. Because if there's no one showing up, I'm like, I wonder if anyone's watching or paying attention. Is it even worth doing this? Because when you're a speaker, you want people to watch you, you want people to follow you. And when no one show up, you're kind of like, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. So you start questioning your own skills. And when people do show up, it's like, oh, I guess I am doing something right. So there's a sense of validation, but also, I need to pay more attention to what I'm saying because people might be watching. So I think it goes both ways.
So I was thinking about this, and it's kind of a weird way to take on it, is like people that would maybe say, hey, I'm not sure if I want to post videos. I'm not sure if I want to be public with my message. But I've recently been thinking about this thing of like having a calling. And when you feel like you're compelled to do something, but you're holding your own self back, and you have a message you want to share. And you have a pretty strong message about taking this trip to Machu Picchu and talking about it, overcoming your fears, and really getting out there and doing it. And so if you choose to not share your message, like, are you being selfish to the world because like you have this message that you could share with somebody that you say, oh, well, I don't want to talk about it because it hurts. It feels uncomfortable for me to get out there and say something about this stuff. But are you doing somebody else a disservice who might have similar circumstances to you, that might be in a place that you once were? And if you don't share your message, that person can't hear that message, and then they might miss out on being inspired to do something that's really going to improve their lifestyle. So, like, I almost feel like if you don't take this leap of faith, in a sense, you're not being true to yourself. You're not letting your gifts that you were given be shared with the world. You're actually hurting people that do need to hear your message.
And you know, the word I use is being selfish. And I know it's a strong word, but, you know, I do feel that if this is a gift that was given to you, and if you do believe that you have a voice, that you have a message, you have an important message to share, then, you know, by holding it back, it's really a really selfish thing for you, because that was given to you as a gift. And that the reason why you got that gift is to share it with other people who need to hear. And yes, as much as uncomfortable it may seem, and initially when I first put out the video, I was in tears. As I was describing it, I was in tears. And it was almost like reliving that experience all over again. It's not a comfortable feeling, but, you know, everyone has a story. Everyone has a journey. And your journey is just as valuable as mine. And my journey, just because it's a car accident, doesn't make yours any less. Even if it means, you know, just going to the grocery shop, that doesn't make your story any less. So you have important message to share for the world, and that's why we're all here. People need to hear that story. People need to see who you are.
Yeah.
And so by sharing that, actually, our story has a lot of healing power. Someone who's hearing it, whoever needs to hear it, there's healing power within it, because that person will resonate with it, and that person will find comfort knowing that he or she is not alone in this world. He or she is going through the same experience that you went through. And what you're doing is you're setting up the example of someone who can overcome those experiences and stand on the other side of the tunnel. And now you're just looking back and share that experience. Someone can use that as a hope. And I think it's really important for everyone to have hope.
Yeah, that's really powerful. So, you know, this show is a bit about networking. You know, I like to get my guests' take on how powerful personal relationships are and how that's affected your journey. So, can you share a story with where you're at now, and like how building relationships have helped you grow your business and your coaching practice?
Yeah. So once I start to really step into I call it my personal power. So my personal power is vulnerability. Once I start showing up and being open to everyone, I approach everyone as, hey, you know, I have this amazing story and I see that you have a podcast. So I start conversation with people, with stranger, with other business owner. And I said, hey, you know, listen, I think I have this great story, and would you be interested to invite me to the show? Or, hey, would you be interested if I come in and maybe do a demo, or maybe, you know, talk to your audience? And it allows me to actually create friendship. And just by opening myself up to that conversation, to that first conversation. Hi, how are you? I'm Michelle. How are you? And you start to engage the other person more openly. And when you use that vulnerability, when you use that openness, when you let your guard down and step into that personal power, you build that connection stronger, and people are more willing to see you for who you are and see what they can do to help you in growing that business. So a lot of my business and clients and speaking opportunity came from the moment where I reach out to people and they say, hey, I have this story. Would you be interested to hear more about it? And that's where my connection came in. And a lot of these podcast hosts or, any show I went to, they all became my friend. So we still have really strong connection.
I think that's so important because like when you're out meeting people, like everybody's nervous about meeting somebody else. And so you're always, like you talked about before, you're playing a script out in your head and you're thinking like, okay, I might want to meet somebody. I might want to say hello, but I don't know what to say. And what if we start talking and then the conversation dies and it's really awkward and I'm just sitting there for like a while. I'm like, how's this going to go down? So like, what if they just don't respond? What if they tell me no? And so we could play this conversation out in our head. And I think I was kind of playing it out in my head a little bit. Like when I started following your posts and stuff, I was like, oh, this person's pretty inspirational. They got a good message. They got like a good Instagram feed that it's like a good story. Like they would make a really good podcast guest, but she's probably kind of busy. She's probably got a lot of stuff going on. She's probably like outside of my level. Like that'd be a reach to like, let me build my podcast up a little bit before I reach out to this person. And then it's flipped. The script flips and you're like, hey, can we chat? Can we meet? I'm like, absolutely. And I think that just goes to show like, hey, don't be afraid to ask, because the worst that's probably happened is you get a no or not right now. But I think most often than not, you're going to get a positive response or maybe a maybe. And if it's a maybe, then it's not a no. So then it can be a yes, or it could lead to something else. Sometimes it's like, hey, I haven't asked. It's like, I can't do anything for you, but I know somebody that can, and let me make a connection for you. And so I think just getting out of our own way sometimes is the biggest hurdle to getting the things we're trying to get after.
And a lot of time these interactions doesn't have to be transactional. And I think a lot of our fear comes from that transactional aspects of it, right? Because we all have business owner and we all have our business. And a lot of time when people approach us, it may sound like very transactional. It doesn't feel genuine. And I think, being genuine and just showing yourself for who you are. And if you're really into building connection, building relationship, show that aspects of you and be clear about that. And, there are times where I reach out to people and then, it's clearly a transactional interaction. I make it clear that, hey, this is a conversational that's going to lead to a transaction. And are you okay or not? And like you said, what's the worst that can happen? People say no. Okay, so move on to the next one. At least we have that clear expectation of this is a transactional relationship. Let's work on that. Versus, if it's something that's very genuine, you want to build that friendship, reach out to people with that genuine side of you. And that whole relationship is going to turn out so much different than if we walk into a relationship with a network event feeling, well, how can I turn that person to my client? If we do that, we already created our perception of I'm going to turn that person into a client. And that would just drop our trust, our relationship by half.
Yeah. And I think you talk about being authentic and stuff like that. And if you look into your own life, yours or mine, where not you personally, but your life in general, like the people like you're the closest to, the people that you're friends with, the reason why you like them is most likely because they allow you to be yourself, and they love and respect you for who you are as a person. And so then we worry about like, oh, if I meet this person, and so we put up a little guard, or we don't act really authentic, or we come across differently. But I think if you just go into like saying, hey, I'm going to be myself, and this person's either going to like me or they're not going to like me, but they're going to like me for me. And then you're more likely to get somebody to get to that friendlier relationship portion of it, when it's just like, hey, here's me authentically, and they like you authentically. And it's like, oh, well, that's why we're friends, is because we didn't have this facade or this like transactional relationship. It was just very like friendly right from the get-go, and they allow me to be myself, and I allow them to be themselves, and this friendship grows, and then the people that they introduce me to, it's contagious. It just explodes out, and he's like, why do you have so many great friends? It's because I be myself in front of as many people as I can be, and I put it out there instead of waiting for people to come to me and like leak out the myself and hold back and hold guard. So I think that's why it's important to be authentic. And it gives you some, especially if somebody's following you like on social media and they don't see you on a day-to-day basis and they just get an idea of who you are from the content you put out. If you put out various angles of yourself, like, hey, I'm not always this success coach. I'm also this person that struggles with the things you struggle with, or I have the same interests as you do, or I got the same hobbies as somebody else, or you got a whole bunch of books in your background here. Like, these are the books on here. Like, all of a sudden, go, hey, I have a shared similar interest as you on that too. Now I'm relatable to you, and it's easier to make that connection. So I think that's another reason why you want to be authentic and be more open and vulnerable with who you are as a person.
And I think that's how you build that rapport. Having that connection with another person on a human level. You see that person as who you are, and that person see you eye to eye as who you are. So I think it really builds a stronger rapport. And a lot of these business transactions actually comes out of these rapport that we build, that friendship that we build, because then someone's going to be thinking about, oh, I remember I spoke to Michelle, and Michelle is a life coach. Let me refer my client to her. That's where the business start to come in. It's by creating those strong rapport and trust and friendship with other people. And I think the transaction is really the byproduct of our friendship and relationship that we build.
Yeah, exactly. So talking about people that work with you, who are the people that seek you out, that look to work with you, and what do you help them with?
So I work really, when we talk about negative self-talk, it really applies to a huge population. So many of my clients, they are a business owner, they're women who's looking into becoming a public speaker, or they're already a public speaker and they're learning how to speak more eloquently and more skillfully. So they're the one who's coming to me looking for confidence. They want to feel comfortable in their own skin, also be confident in the way that they show up with their voice. Everyone has a message to share, and sometimes it's really hard when we're so tied down with our self-talk. We're constantly, our mind is busy and running. Chances are we're not going to show up as that true, authentic self. So a lot of people come to me because they're looking for the confidence to show up and having less self-doubt and worry and things like that. So a lot of those clients are coming to me.
I think it's really important for people, especially if you're looking to project a more confident public image, is to have a coach that specializes in this, because too often we'll use our friends and family to give us, critique us on stuff of this caliber, and they'll say, "Oh, it's so good, you did so great," and it's a lot of cheerleading, and depending on like who your audience is and what level you're going after, like sometimes you do need to have a little bit more critical critique, that somebody's going to say that's good, but it's not that good. And one of my podcasting friends, he hired a stand-up comedian coach, and because he was like, he's like, yeah, being a comedian has always been an interest of mine, but I'm scared to death of public speaking. So he's like wanting to get there. And he's like, yeah, I'd practice my jokes on my friends, and they'd be like, that's pretty funny. And he'd go to his comedian coach, like, not funny, not funny, not funny. Like, try this, practice it, like try this as a different way. And so like, you have to get somebody that's going to really give you good feedback, so that when you do go present it, you're just knocking it out of the park, because they've guided you down this path. And what the other thing with the coaches is, it's not so much that they just tell you what to do, but they find what's in you and pull the best version of yourself out. So I think if you're somebody that wants to have more confidence, and wants to get out there and be a better public speaker, or just wants to just have general confidence and in life, getting a coach is a good idea. And I see no reason why you're not well qualified to help people out with that. So I'd definitely be sending people your way.
Thank you. You're right. A lot of us have that good quality, that strength within us. And sometimes we're so bogged down by, what's not working out. So we don't really see our strength. And, I think that applies to our current situation. Like a lot of people sitting at home, maybe they're worried about losing their job. And when you do that, you're focusing on everything on what's wrong. I'm not doing well. I'm not doing this right. But you forget that, along the way, you have all these strength, you have all these ability to be here. There's something good inside of you, and we need to pick it out. We need to draw it out and use more of. And sometimes our family, our friend, they're just being too nice and too generous to us. So they don't point out, like a Toastmaster, for example, they'll pick out the ha, and, right? So they'll pick out the filler words. And maybe our friend and our family doesn't pick up on that. So having someone being more objectively looking at what our strengths are, what are some of the weaknesses, where can we improve on the weakness, that would really help us lifting up and going to that self-mastery mode, because we don't want just performing. We want to self-mastery. We want to reach that mastery level. So I think that's why, having a coach is great. I have a mentor coach who helped me with the business.
Everybody should have a coach, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So if somebody wants to find you, where can they come and get in contact with you and talk to you more about having you be their coach?
They can find me on my website at elevatelifecoaching.org, or they can follow me on Instagram at Elevate Life Coach.
Awesome. I'll put all that information in the show notes. And I just want to thank you for your time coming out here on a Friday afternoon. It's not too late because you're California time like me, but sometimes we're on Zoom calls, so there's time changes and people are I'll get on one at 5 a.m. or somebody else is at 10 p.m. their time. It's hey, we just kind of make do what we got to do, because like you said, discipline and consistency pays off. So that'll all be linked. I just want to thank you again for coming on the show. You got an amazing story, and you're full of energy and very inspiring. I think you're going to make a difference in a lot of people's lives.
Thank you so much, Nate.
Thank you.
Make sure to visit our website, therealnatepeo.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, so you'll never miss an episode of All In. While you're at it, if you found value, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if simply tell 2 friends about the show. Looking to connect? You can find Nate Peo on LinkedIn or Instagram.